Long before Halloween became a night of candy, costumes, and haunted houses, it was a festival born from fire and fear, marking the boundary between the living and the dead. Thousands of years ago, on the wind-swept hills of ancient Ireland and Scotland, the Celts celebrated Samhain, a mysterious night when the world of the living blurred with the realm of the spirits. As the harvest ended and winter's cold grip tightened, people believe that on October 31st, the dead returned to walk the earth. To protect themselves from these wandering souls, they lit massive bonfires, wore disguises, and left offerings to appease the spirits. What began as a sacred ritual to keep darkness at bay eventually spread across centuries and continents, blending with Christian beliefs and local customs, morphing into the Halloween that we know today. It's a story of survival, superstition, and the enduring human fascination with the unknown. By the 5th century, Christianity had spread into Celtic lands, where it gradually blended with and supplanted older pagan rites. In the 10th century, Abbot Odilo of France designated November 2nd as All Souls' Day, a time for honoring the dead. Celebrations in England resembled Celtic commemorations of Samhain, complete with bonfires and masquerades. Poor people would visit the houses of wealthier families and receive pastries called soul cakes in exchange for a promise to pray for the souls of the homeowner's dead relatives. Known as souling, the practice was later taken up by children who would go from door to door asking for gifts such as food, money, and ale. In Scotland and Ireland, young people took part in a tradition called guising, dressing up in costume and accepting offerings from various households. Rather than pledging to pray for the dead, they would sing a song, recite a poem, or tell a joke, or perform another sort of trick before collecting their treat, which typically consisted of fruit, nuts, or coins. It's all starting to make sense. Modern-day trick-or-treating also has elements akin to annual celebrations of Guy Fawkes Night, also known as Bonfire Night. On this night, which commemorates the foiling of the gunpowder plot in 1605, British children wore masks and carried effigies while begging for pennies. On November 5th, 1606, Fawkes was executed for his role in the Catholic-led conspiracy to blow up England's Parliament building and remove King James I as Protestant from power. On the original Guy Fawkes Day, celebrated immediately after the famous plotter's execution, communal bonfires, or bonfires, were lit to burn effigies and the symbolic bones of the Catholic Pope. By the early 19th century, children bearing effigies of Fawkes were roaming the streets on the evening of November 5th, asking for a penny for the guy. In the early 20th century, Irish and Scottish communities revived the old war traditions of souling and guising in the United States. By the 1920s, however, pranks had become the Halloween activity of choice for rowdy young people. Halloween began to change from a modest community celebration into a massive commercial holiday. Costumes became more expensive and elaborate, from sheets and homemade to mass-produced outfits for children and adults. You will see it in a yearly store known as the Spirit Halloween Store, along with many other props and decorations that many, like me, like to spend way too much money on. Pumpkins, once carved as simple lanterns in Ireland to ward off the spirits, transformed into the modern jack-o'-lantern, often depicting elaborate and frightening faces. In today's world, it's very popular to have pumpkin carving contests. By the 1970s, Halloween had taken on its modern form. It was now a night of trick-or-treating, costume parties, haunted houses, and of course, scary movies. The holiday's roots in death and the supernatural lingered, but Halloween had become more about fun and fright than genuine fear. With the rise of horror films and pop culture's fascination with the macabre, Halloween grew into an event that catered to both children and adults, with celebrations ranging from innocent and fun to downright spine-chilling. Both sound fun to me, by the way. My favorite holiday. The Great Depression exacerbated the problem, with Halloween mischief often devoting into vandalism, physical assaults, and sporadic acts of violence. One theory suggests that excessive pranks on Halloween led to the widespread adoption of an organized community-based trick-or-treating tradition in the 1930s. This trend was abruptly curtailed, however, with the outbreak of World War II, when sugar rationing meant there were few treats to hand out. At the height of the post-war baby boom, trick-or-treating reclaimed its place among other Halloween customs. It quickly became standard practice for millions of children in America's cities and newly built suburbs. No longer constrained by sugar rationing, candy companies capitalized on the lucrative ritual, launching national advertising campaigns specifically aimed at Halloween. Today, Americans spend an estimated $3.1 billion on candy for Halloween, according to the National Retail Federation, and the day itself has become the nation's second largest commercial holiday. While Halloween began in the Celtic lands of Europe, its modern form has spread far beyond those borders, particularly in the 20th century. In places like Canada, Australia, Japan, Halloween has gained popularity, though each country celebrates it with its own twist. In Japan, for example, the holiday is often associated with cosplay and massive parades like the Kawasaki Halloween Parade, attracting thousands of participants in stunning, elaborate attire. In Mexico, Halloween coincides with Dia de los Muertos, can't quite say it, a vibrant spiritual holiday dedicated to honoring the dead. Let's try it again. Dia de los Muertos. Though distinct from Halloween in its tone and meaning, the two holidays share thematic overlap, with both focusing on the relationship between the living and the deceased. In countries like France and Germany, Halloween arrived later, but has steadily gained popularity, especially among the younger generations, eager for parties and costumes and ghostly fun. However, not every part of the world embraces Halloween's more commercial aspects. In places like Italy and China, the holiday remains more subdued, often blending with local traditions that already honor the dead, such as All Souls Day or the Hungry Ghost Festival. Both of them sound fun. Still, wherever it travels, Halloween spirits an evening of transformation, community, and flirtation with the eerie, finds ways to adapt and thrive. For most American kids, it wouldn't be Halloween without trick-or-treating for candy. However, that wasn't always the case. When the custom of trick-or-treating started in the early 1930s, early 40s, children were given everything from homemade cookies and pieces of cake to fruit, nuts, coins, and even toys. In the 1950s, candy manufacturers began to get in on the act and promote their products for Halloween. And as trick-or-treating became more popular, candy was increasingly regarded as an affordable, convenient offering. It wasn't until the 1970s, though, that wrapped factory-made candy was viewed as the only acceptable thing to hand out to all those little ghosts and goblins that showed up on people's doorsteps. The key reason for this being, you guessed it, safety. Parents feared that the real-life boogeyman might tamper with the goodies that were not store-bought and safety-sealed. Today, when it comes to Halloween candy, a number of the most popular brands are enduring classics. For example, the first Hershey's milk chocolate bar was produced in the 1900s, and Hershey's Kisses made their debut in 1907. Company founder Milton Hershey was a pioneer in the mass production of milk chocolate and turned what previously had been a luxury item for the well-to-do into something affordable for the average Americans. In the early 1900s, he also built an entire town, Hershey, Pennsylvania, around his chocolate factory. Willy Wonka who? In 1917, Harry Burnett Reese moved to Hershey, where he was employed as a dairyman for the chocolate company and later worked for its factory. Inspired by Milton Hershey's success, Reese, who eventually had 16 children, began making candies in his basement. In the mid-1920s, he built a factory of his own and produced an assortment of candies, including the peanut butter cups, which he invented in 1928 and made with Hershey's chocolate. During World War II, a shortage of ingredients led Reese to pull the plug on his other candies and focus on his most popular product, the peanut butter cups. I love those. In 1963, Hershey acquired the H.B. Reese Candy Company. Who invented candy corn? The tri-colored confection was designed to look like chicken feed and came out at a time when about half of Americans worked on farms. So what about you? Do you like candy corn? I used to love them. 1923, a struggling Minnesota-born candy maker, Frank Mars, launched the Milky Way bar, which became a bestseller. I want to hear about Snickers. I love Snickers. In 1930, he introduced the Snickers bar, reportedly named from his favorite horse, followed in 1932 by the Three Musketeers bar. Gosh, yes! Oh, Frank's son Forrest eventually joined the company, only to leave after a falling out with his father. Forrest Mars relocated to England, where he created the Mars bar in the early 1930s. In 1941, he launched M&Ms. I love M&Ms. Mars anticipated that World War II would produce a cocoa shortage, so he partnered with Bruce Murray, a son of Hershey executive, in order to have access to a sufficient supply of ingredients. The candy's name stands for Mars and Murray. I didn't know that, you guys. Oh my gosh. Now we know what M&M stands for. Another crowd-pleasing Halloween candy, the Kit Kat bar, my mama's favorite, was first sold in England in 1935 as a Roundtree's chocolate crisp. In 1937 was rechristened the Kit Kat chocolate crisp. The name is said to be derived from a London literary and political group, the Kit Kat or the Kit Kat Club, established in the late 17th century. The group's moniker is thought to be an abbreviation of the name of the man who owned the shop where the group originally gathered. Since 1988, the brand has been owned by Nestle, maker of another perennial trick-or-treat favorite, the Nestle Crunch Bar, which debuted in the late 1930s. And of course, no Halloween would be complete without candy corn. It was invented in the 1880s by George Renninger of the Wonderful Candy Company of Philadelphia. Now, a lot of you might not like it, but kids love it. Other companies went on to produce their very own versions of the tricolor treat, none longer than the Golet's Confectionery Company, now the Jelly Belly Candy Factory, which has been doing so since 1898. I remember trick-or-treating wearing one of those Ben Cooper costumes from Kmart. I still remember that plastic smell of the mask today, and I really couldn't see through the mask, and how that band in the back of it I was so uncomfortable, guys. It was the most uncomfortable thing in the world. I believe I was a Smurf one year. I know I was Strawberry Shortcake one year, and I love the costumes, but I didn't like the band in the back, but I just remember the smell of it. I loved the smell. Just putting on the mask and having the little plastic costume on. I just love those costumes. One year I was Private Benjamin, all dressed up in my army wear, And we always used these big old pillowcases back then. And I think people still kind of use them today, more like their little baskets stay in buckets. But the pillowcases held so much more. I still remember when I think about 3 or 4, I was so scared of all the big old props, like the things hanging from the trees. There was this guy hanging from the tree and some of the things from their porches. And my little heart was pounding so hard, and I was crying and just covering my little eyes. So my aunt had to carry me past all that scary stuff. I mean, it was scary, traumatizing. My favorite Halloween pastime was going to the house that made homemade popcorn balls. And we knew this lady, so we trusted her. But that was my favorite, those homemade popcorn balls. My favorite candy out of my pillowcase was, believe it or not, it was the Tootsie Roll back then. The Tootsie Roll, I would eat it, and I wasn't supposed to because I had all these little silver caps in my teeth, and the Tootsie Pops would take at least 2 of my caps out, and I'd have to go back to the dentist. I loved the pixie sticks, Halloween was so magical back then. Besides all this really scary stuff that scared me to pieces, it was magical. What's your guys' favorite memories of Halloween? What was your favorite candy? When you were trick-or-treating, what was your favorite costume or your favorite costumes that you wore as kids? Let me know in the comments. What began as a sacred Celtic ritual marking the thinning of the veil between life and death has transformed into a global phenomenon, but the essence of Halloween remains unchanged. It's a night where the familiar and the strange intermingle, where the mundane world pauses and invites the unknown to step forward. Whether you're lighting candles to honor ancestors, or wandering the dark streets in costume, or carving faces into pumpkins, Halloween is a celebration of what lies just beyond the edge of our understanding. Through centuries of evolution, from flickering bonfires of Samhain, thanks to my friend Jim for teaching me that it's not Samhain, it's Samhain. So thank you, Jim. To the candy-filled streets of today, Halloween has remained a night for embracing both the mystery of the past and the playful fear of the unknown. It's a reminder that no matter how much time passes, humanity is forever drawn to the shadows, to the question of what lingers in the darkness. And for one night a year, we welcome it. I want to thank you all for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed this very special episode. Let me know what you think. Leave those comments. I love you all, and I will see you next time on Tales Told in the Dark.